give a report on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a detailed review of our February financials presented by Mr. Owens. We also reviewed in depth our 2026 fiscal year budget proposal, especially highlights and changes. Excited that at this moment there are no rate increases proposed in the 2026 fiscal budget. We also reviewed and recommended that the full commission handle contract awarding for elevated storage tank and water production facilities at exit 29. So good meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We'll move to the approval section, and I want to ask that a motion to defer item 8 from the agenda.
I'll make a motion to defer item 8 on the agenda, the agreement with HRC Altoma LLC.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item 1 on the agenda is minutes from the February 20th, 25 commission meeting. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the minutes from the February 20, 2025 commission meeting be accepted as presented.
Second.
Next item is fiscal year 26.
No.
Executive
It's
session.
from the executive session, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented for the February 20th, 2025 executive session.
Or second.
All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item there is the fiscal year 26 property and liability insurance renewal. Mr. Burrs and Mr. Guinea.
Yes, sir. So I'll hit the highlights and the cost, and then any specific questions I'll refer to Mr. McGinty, who can answer as our subject matter expert. But traditionally, we have worked with Oak Ridge to provide brokerage services for various liability and property coverage insurances. This is typically done at the March meeting, and we have a suite of packages there you see. We saw a pretty significant increase in our liability package around auto liability due to both accident history and the increased value of our vehicles. But we did see a reasonable decrease in property insurance coverage, which was very nice to see after years of large increases in the property insurance areas. The total combined increase in all of the packages is $9,154, or 1.3%. So the total premium for next year for the 6 types of insurance in the packet there is $724,386. This was presented to the Finance Committee yesterday. There were some questions about the potential to change some deductibles and coverage levels and things like that, which was discussed, and Mr. McGinty indicated that those could be brought back and potentially done at a later date should that be necessary or requested. But with that, I'll turn it over for questions and anything Mr. McGinty would like to add.
First of all, I don't qualify as an expert. I understand that's somebody with a briefcase more than 20 miles from home. The Commissioner Watson asked yesterday about the possibility of increasing the deductibles on the automobile physical damage coverage. Currently, it's $1,000 for vehicles, except for the extra heavy trucks is $2,500. I was able to get and he also asked about possibility of dropping comprehensive and collision coverage on the lower valued vehicles as a potential of cost savings. I was able to get the underwriters to give us a revised cost to, if we drop physical damage coverage completely, comprehensive and collision on all the vehicles that are cost new under $25,000, that took 38 vehicles off the schedule, and it would save $9,485. And in addition to that, it included raising the deductible on all the vehicles to a minimum of $2,500. I looked at what would happen if we increase that to $30,000, and it would take another 21 vehicles off the schedule at $602,000 in total cost new. I don't have a premium for that yet, but I can get it if you're interested. If we reduced it down to $20,000, it would add 10 vehicles back and another $236,000 of cost new total, and I don't have a premium statement for that. So it gives you some idea where the vehicles are in terms of, and most of those vehicles under 25,000 were older, good, significantly older vehicles, where the actual cash value of those vehicles now is probably less than half of the $564,000 that the total cost new was.
How long do we keep collision on these vehicles?
As long as you want to pay for it.
So we don't have any rule of thumb?
We have not ever instituted any rule of thumb on that. That was the discussion we had yesterday, was these older vehicles that are lower value, did it make sense to continue to insure them at that level?
The one thing I didn't think about yesterday on increasing the deductible on comprehensive to $2,500, the one kind of concern there is that's where you have coverage for flood on vehicles. So if we had a storm and flooded out a bunch of vehicles, it might make sense to increase the deductible to $2,500 on collision, leave it at $1,000 on the comprehensive. I don't think that'll make a big difference in the cost savings.
And you said the reduction would be around $9,500?
$9,485. That's increasing the deductible to $2,500 on all vehicles at least, and eliminating coverage on the vehicles $25,000 and lower in cost new.
How many claims did we have last year?
Well, we had, I think, 2 or 3 claims. We had more accidents than that, but unless it's a pretty significant accident, we don't make claims. So we self-insure that, even though we have the insurance. So I know we had one pretty significant accident, and I think one smaller accident that got transferred over. I believe that was 2 total last year on the auto liability.
Or if we do that, then we need to amend the motion, right?
You would amend the motion to increase the deductible to $2,500 and remove the vehicles valued less than $25,000
For physical damage.
for physical damage.
Finance committee feel about that.
I have a kind of a mixed feeling because, I mean, I know insurance is important and you end up spending money when you have accidents, or could be more. It's something you, and $9,400 doesn't seem like that much money to save overall. So I would feel more comfortable keeping it where it is.
Agree.
I'll move the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve insurance renewal rates for each coverage category and insurer as listed in the attached 2025 property and liability insurance premium summary.
Second.
My question back to the finance committee would be is, your personal vehicles at your house, do you ever take collision off, or you leave collision till the car dies?
I don't know, I haven't had a car last that long. I keep turning them over, so.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm surprised that the savings isn't more than that.
Exactly.
And, but I'm also surprised that we didn't have more claims than that. So the net savings wouldn't be probably $5,000 by the time we increase the premium, I mean, the deductible, and then take that away. It just, I don't know if we can find other ways to look to save money across the board, but this doesn't seem to meet a threshold of payback. But I get Dave's point, you know. We take collision off for our older vehicles too, but if these vehicles are still in service every day, still running every day, you know, when I had them, the older vehicles didn't work as hard. So they weren't exposed as much, weren't on the road as much. And that kind
Well, I'll say most of the older vehicles that we do have are at the wastewater plants because they don't get as many miles on them. Most of our distribution and collections and production vehicles aren't that old because they get so many miles put on them throughout the year. I mean, we've got 3 and 4 year old trucks that's got close to 200,000 miles on them just because of how much they drive. So we don't get,
So
the older vehicles don't get a lot of mileage on them. Now, you could drop collision on those because they're typically just around the plant.
that was my next question. How many of those vehicles are not on the road, so to speak?
They will all be on the road periodically, but it is very rare that a plant truck would go on the road. So we've got some nicer vehicles, newer vehicles that they drive in between the plants, but the stuff they use around the plant, unless they had to run unexpectedly somewhere, those are never going to be on the road.
So is that something that, we go ahead and pass this, but then we do an analysis of what that would be to just self-insure
That
some
can
of
absolutely
those
be done.
vehicles altogether?
I would agree with that.
Then he said yesterday, we can always.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, I could take a look at that. It makes good sense.
Thank you.
Seven to nothing. Thank you, Mr. McGinney. Next item is contract award, Splash Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank. Division 2, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Yesterday, we talked about this at both facilities and finance, and it was recommended to move forward by both committees. Division 2 of this contract is for the construction of a 500,000-gallon elevated storage tank on property owned by the JWSC due south of the existing wastewater treatment plant at Exit 29. Divisions 1 and 3 were awarded in January. We received 2 bids on this project, with the low bid being from Landmark Structures in the amount of $7,767,000. That was below the final engineer's opinion of probable cost provided by the engineer of record, Thomas & Hutton. This would, if awarded today, consume the bulk of the remaining Tier 1 SPLOST funds. If this contract is awarded, that would leave $361,942 uncommitted in Tier 1 SPLOST funding from SPLOST 2022.
Have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission award a contract to Landmark Storages in the amount of $7,767,000 for Division 2 of the Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank Project.
Second.
Carries 7 to nothing. Thank you. 5 is contract award, Splash Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank Construction Phase Services. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. And on the tail end of what we just did, we can update our memo from the proposed language that is in there. But the construction phase services for our engineer of record was considered as a percentage of construction cost at the time of RFP. They submitted a proposal for 3% of construction cost. At that time in the RFP, it was listed that the contract would be under one contract for construction. Since this was split into 3 different divisions and we have 3 separate contractors, Thomas & Hutton has requested an adjustment to that cost proposal from 3% to 3.8%. Based off of the awarded contract amounts for the 3 divisions, 3.8% is $487,350. There is also a request for $6,258 for the rebid of Division 2 for updating the plans and specs, as well as doing the bid opening and things of that nature. And then there was a small amount for $458 for permitting fees not originally included in the proposal. The total combined cost of the construction phase services and the additional funding for the rebid and permitting is $493,608. If awarded, this would consume the remaining uncommitted Tier 1 SPLOST funds and utilize $131,666 of uncommitted Tier 2 SPLOST funds. If those funds were not provided through the SPLOST referendum, this additional funding would be paid for by the R&R reserve. And in the proposal, that was requested from the engineer. It is 40 hours of construction observation for this project per week for this project. Yeah, not total. That's not going to work. 40 hours per week while they're under construction. If there's no work going on, they won't be out there.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission contract to Thomas & Hutton in the amount of $493,608 for construction phase services for the Exit 29 Water Production Facility and Elevated Storage Tank Project.
Second, any questions?
Should that motion say award a contract?
In theory, yes, sir. My apologies.
I'll amend my motion to include the word award.
So it's official.
For the benefit of those that were not here yesterday, we did review certain line items, and Mr. Chairman brought up like the special inspections allowance for $150,000 on item 4. Those items may or may not be
Awarded.
incurred.
Right.
So those are as needed items. So it sounds like we're going through a $7 million approval process relatively quick. We've spent a lot of time yesterday reviewing these contracts, and then even before, obviously before yesterday.
And this is really one of the very important SPLOST projects that's going on. All these people down and around exit 29 are going to benefit from this. Steady pressure, more water available, and the flow all the way around, so we don't have any dead ends and things. So it's a really important project, and we're going to use a substantial amount of our SPLOST funds for this. But if anyone out there wants to know, where is my money going for, this is what it's for. And all these people down in that area down there are going to benefit greatly from it.
Absolutely.
As well as all of our customers, because then we don't have to spend all our time down there fixing things. So.
Mr. Bros, this also supports the expansion of the port, is that correct?
Yes, certainly with the expansion of the port, not necessarily the port does not buy water from us, but the off-site improvements that are ongoing and the growth that is being incurred residentially because of port operations, this is a benefit to that.
Appreciate all your comments. Any others? Carries 7-0. Thank you. Next item is contract award Academy Creek Water Pollution Control Plant sludge dryer repairs.
Yes, sir. We operate a sludge dryer at Academy Creek to dry sludge that has been pressed through a belt filter press from anywhere 15 to 18% solids off the belt press up to 95% solids out of the dryer. That sludge is in landfill at 2 sites, one in Folkestone and one in Screven. And the dryer obviously saves us a substantial amount of money because the landfill charges us on a tonnage basis. And we have been doing significant amounts of solids handling improvements at Academy Creek since January, and we are utilizing the dryer in ways it had previously not been utilized. And the unfortunate downside of that is sometimes you find issues that we're previously not aware of. And so we have brought before you today a request to rebuild portions of the dryer for the bearings and sprockets that allow the dryer to operate. The cost of this is $147,200.68. That is slightly different than the dollar value in the paragraph above. That is because we are including an $8,000 charge for expediting some of the parts so we can get it back online quicker. AIT Services is owned and operated by one of the designers of our sludge dryer, and the company that we bought it from is no longer in business. So we are limited in the availability of parts, so he has to manufacture these parts. The payback on this is 2 months based off of tipping fees at the landfill. So it seems like a lot of money, but as soon as it's back online, it will save this amount of money in 2 months compared to continuing to press without drying. And we also are bringing sludge from the other 2 facilities to Academy Creek to run through the dryer as well.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve a contract award in the amount of $147,268 to AIT Services for the rehab of the Academy Creek sludge dryer.
Second.
Second, any questions?
That dryer was put in 2008 or 9, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. 18 to 20 years old. Previously, there was composting equipment. We have composting equipment still down there. If anybody wants some 30-year-old composting equipment or has a use for it, I'll be happy to sell it to you at a very reasonable price.
How much is a new dryer roughly?
$5 million.
Facilities Committee meeting.
Roughly.
We asked for the director to look into that and for us to consider, because we do need to put that on. We do need to.
Well, $5 million is not just the equipment. That's everything that goes into installing and everything. Equipment's probably 2.5.
7-0. Thank you. This item is USGS Joint Funding Agreement. Mr. Burris.
So this is an annual item. We operate, or U.S. Geological Survey operates groundwater monitoring equipment for the upper Florida aquifer to monitor the migration of chlorides due to saltwater intrusion into the aquifer. You may have heard this referred to as the T-shaped plume in downtown. We contribute in a joint funding agreement to U.S. Geological Survey, and they contribute a portion as well to maintain this system. There's real-time data that can be pulled up on the U.S. Geological Survey's website, and you can record that. We have had impacts from this in the past. We've had to close the Perry Park well, and we have other wells that are in the near vicinity of the plume, but so far they have not caused problems that would require us to do anything. But not knowing where that plume would be at would cause us problems down the road. So this year's annual agreement is a $85,000 contribution from the JWSC and a $75,000 contribution by the U.S. Geological Survey. It has never been 50-50, so that's not unexpected. And this is an annual budgeted item in the Office of the Director's Technical Service budget, and we do have funds available in our budget to handle that. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission enter into a joint funding agreement with USGS in the amount of $85,000 for the continuation of groundwater monitoring in the upper Floridian aquifer.
Second, any questions?
we'll state that I mentioned this at the Finance Committee yesterday. Dr. Cherry, who operates the program, would be more than willing to come down at any meeting y'all would like for him to discuss the ongoing work if you would like more details on that.
That was going to be my comment, was to see if we could get him to do a presentation.
I think it would be very educational.
So
Certainly you could invite the public to come in and understand things about that.
Has the plume changed due to Panova?
we
We don't have enough data.
We have about a year and a half worth of data. It obviously has shifted closer. The concentration, the shape of the plume hasn't changed much. The concentrations have shifted closer to Brunswick cellulose. On the mainland, we pull about 5-6 million gallons a day, depending on time of year. Brunswick cellulose is 25 to 30 MGD. So they're just pulling those higher concentrations closer to them, which helps us out in downtown. Does potentially give us more concern at the Brunswick-Villa well, but that is being actively monitored. So we'll see how it continues to shift. But obviously, it's being pulled closer to them and away from the Panova site at this point.
Since this is a pretty important thing, I'd like for you to show on the screen the slides that we
Oh, the plume, yeah.
how it's moved around over a period of time.
All right, let me get down here. Okay, so this is in every year's proposal. He updates the shape of the plume about every 5 years, and he monitors. And so, as with any good science, it doesn't happen quickly. But we have data back from the 50s and 60s where you had a source area at Bay Street that started, and then with the rapid increase in withdrawal rates due to plant operations, you started seeing the major influx beginning in the 70s and 80s. And you can see the warmer the colors here, the higher the level of chlorides in the plume. So your red and orange, the red's the highest, orange obviously the second highest there. This is Brunswick Cellulose's facility here. Like I said, they are the largest water user in Glynn County, and so they pull a vast amount of water each day. Panova, obviously being in this general vicinity here, what we've seen with the data, he has not updated the plume information yet, but what it seems with the data is that this red area here is shifting a little bit further to the west. I guess that's the southwest, anyway. And a little bit away from here. Now we have wells all throughout the city. The Brunswick-Villa well, let me get my bearings right here, is in this general area right here, right on the edge of the plume. So we do have active monitoring going on. We do not monitor real time for chlorides. That's not something you can take an immediate sample of, but it is a specific conductance meter, and that specific conductance has a linear relationship with chloride. So we know approximately what the chloride is without actually having to sample for it. So that is all-time real information you can pull up on USGS's website.
Just for curiosity, who's the orange to the right there, right below your...
Right here?
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily any one specific user. I think that's just due to the years of it being pulled closer to Brunswick Cellulose, and then both Brunswick Cellulose and Panova, before they closed, had both reduced their withdrawal rates drastically compared to their peaks. Back in, I believe, around the 60s and 70s, GP was pulling somewhere around 60 million a day. So they've cut their withdrawal substantially down from what it was, and that's why you see the reduction from the early 2000s to 2020 in those chlorides, because the rate of withdrawal has reduced so much over time.
So with the plume, the well that's closest to the plume, do we have options, or we just have to shut it down if it actually becomes a problem?
You can potentially grout it up a little bit to help with that and go to a different aquifer, or you could grout it completely closed and just close the well. Now, that is the oldest well on the mainland. So, I mean, I don't want to get rid of it. We always need all the well space we can get. But if there was one that had to be shut down, getting rid of the one that's been around the longest probably makes the most sense anyway. So, like I said, the Perry Park well was grouted closed. That was 2015, somewhere in that ballpark. Before I arrived, but right before I got here, they had to grout that one.
It's been a much bigger issue up in Savannah, and they've had, actually years ago, had to go to a fresh surface water plant also. And now they're having to spend with the Hyundai plant and everything else. They got a big water issue that's
Yeah. In that area up there, they're having to install intakes off the Savannah River to do surface water treatment to replace all of the groundwater that's being used for the Hyundai plant to get it off of the system. So they've got, you heard talk about the red zone. We do have a very small red zone in downtown Brunswick. I think all of Chatham County is the red zone, and there's areas of the adjacent counties that fall into that, I believe. And then Hilton Head across the border is in similar situations. So we keep an eye on this, so hopefully we don't turn into having those kind of restrictions down here.
We're probably going to want to drill another well in the near future. Andrew will be getting back with us on site for that. So.
On the north end.
So here's a little bit more of a, instead of the historical, if this clears up. Maybe not. A little bit brighter picture here, but this is in 2023. So the Brunswick Villa well right here is the closest well we have to the shape of the plume. Yeah, it runs a decent amount, yes, sir. And this is October 23, so this was about when Pinova stopped withdrawing. So this is probably the last of the major withdrawal from Pinova, because that's when they stopped discharging to the wastewater facility.
What's happening to their wells?
To my knowledge, nothing at this point. We have had some conversation about their capacity. Not their wells, their capacity. Yes, sir.
Item 9, dedication of easements and infrastructure. Mr. Klein?
Did we vote on that? We had a motion and a second, but I don't know if we voted.
Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Klein, dedication of easements and infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good afternoon. So this has 2 items on it to be considered. The first one is a private residential development, Grace Crossing Phase 2C, which is up off of Harry Driggers Boulevard. And the second one is to help in the construction of our Exit 42 elevated storage tank. That is a temporary construction easement from an adjacent property. So I'll talk about the first one, Grace Crossing. Developer is Solid Rock Holdings LLC, and they wish to dedicate a little over 1,700 linear feet of 8-inch PVC water mains, a little over 1,100 linear feet of 8-inch PVC gravity sewers with manholes. And this private development will result in the addition of 32 new customers into the rolls of the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. Second one is up off of Exit 42. This one here, this site, and I'm going to jump down here to GIS to show you a little bit. Oh, it dropped off. Anyway, bear with me. I'll navigate to it. So our tank site is nestled right up against. Ooh, somebody clicked on contours. That's why it's taking so long. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Okay, Exit 42 is up here. Bucky's, of course, is where the magnifying glass is. That's going in. And then to the south, right here, is our tank site. Actually, Cherokee Trail. Right here is our tank site. It's where elevated storage tank, 3/4 million gallon tank is going. And there are two developments happening right now. To the south is a warehouse, and to the north is also another warehouse type development. We do have an easement that runs straight through Development Authority property, and that was traditionally the access for our tank site. We have an existing gravity sewer and water main that run through there. And construction, they've already cleared everything. Once construction begins hot and heavy on this site right here, they are likely going to restrict access pretty well, and it's going to get real busy. So working through the Development Authority and the adjacent property owner, is willing to grant us a temporary construction easement that's going to border the south side of this property line and give us much easier access. Stay out of the way of these guys while they're doing their thing. And it is up to 3 years. It's the temporary nature of it. And I think it's going to help a lot getting that thing put in there. So
We discussed at the Facilities Committee yesterday, the permanent access to the tank will be via public right-of-way that will be installed for the northern warehousing facility.
So it doesn't look like this anymore. All the trees are essentially gone, and once this pulls up here, as Mr. Burris said, the access is pretty much going to follow this, what's called Cherokee Trail now. It's really literally a trail through the woods, and that will become public right away. And they'll curve around to this northern development here. We'll have access to our tank site on this side. So.
There's no trees there now.
Trees have
No, I
been
went by the other day.
relocated, yes.
Relocated.
Transition to a new role.
Transition to a new role, yes. So happy to, there are also record drawings are attached for the Grace Crossing development, and happy to answer any questions if there's any.
Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve and accept these projects with associated documentation.
Second.
Second, any questions? How many new customers will we get now?
Grace Crossing is going to give us 32. Yes, sir. 32 residential connections. Yes, sir.
All that infrastructure didn't cost us anything, right?
It was all driven by private development. They don't wish to maintain that as private. They wish to dedicate that for maintenance and ownership going forward. So,
Thank you, Todd.
thank you.
All in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Director's update?
Yes, sir. Prior to our next meeting, we will be accepting bids on the FEMA fixed generator installation. It is for 8 generators. 3, we have already purchased the physical generators. 3 of those are at Academy Creek, and the other 5 are at well facilities to replace existing generators at the well facilities. Those bids are due back April the 2nd at this time. And so hopefully we'll have that for your consideration at the next meeting. Also something that if you're interested in early May, we've got to register you in advance. Georgia Rural Water will be hosting their annual spring conference on Jekyll. I believe it's the 5th through the 7th of May. Don't quote me on those exact days. It's around that time period in May. But it's a good way if you would like more information about our industry to get some contacts, and also there's some presentations in an exhibit hall. We have a great deal of our staff that goes with it being on Jekyll, and it's a good way for you to get plugged in to the water industry. If you'd like to do that, please let me know. That's all I got.
Any other commissioners have anything?
The total amount, did you get the total amount for the?
Yes. All right, the one the other day was $11,231.24.
They agreed to pay?
It hasn't been billed out yet, but we are not responsible for asphalt.
What do you mean we're not responsible?
The boring contractor has agreed to handle the asphalt. I wasn't going to argue with him.
I just want to say that I think we have a pretty good organization with people worked 43 years. I know some of that was with the city of Brunswick and maybe the county, but it's nice to see that we have employees who want to stay with us for a long time. Appreciate that time they spent, and I want to wish them well in their retirement or whatever direction they go. I would recommend y'all consider going to the Georgia Rural Water Conference. It's over in Jekyll, and at least just walk through the exhibit hall, because that way you get to see some of the equipment that we're talking about and talk with some of the reps. The exhibit hall is open most of the time, and two, you'll get to see a lot of our employees because they have to be there to get the certification. And a lot of those people, other employees, not from our system, but from other systems, I don't see them until it's time to get their cards signed in the afternoon. It depends on the weather. If it's rainy, they might be there, but otherwise, they're gonna be out at the beach or someplace like that. But I tell you, I was in classes all day long, and I really do appreciate that. And I think this just goes back to the leadership that we have with our leaders here today. So I hope some of y'all can make that conference. That's my report. Do we need to have an executive session? Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we go into executive session for the purpose of litigation.
Second.
Favor? Motion carries 7-0. We'll adjourn for executive session.
There will be no action taken.